The church was draped in silence. Outside, the sky sagged heavy with gray clouds, as though the heavens themselves had chosen to mourn. The rain from the night before lingered in thin beads on the iron gates and dark marble steps, while the air carried the faint smell of wet earth and lilies. Funeral flowers lined in perfect rows along the aisle. Amanda Williams' portrait stood at the altar, a large gilded frame holding the image of a woman with soft, intelligent eyes and a smile that looked too alive to be frozen. She had been powerful, elegant, the kind of presence that lit up rooms without effort. And now, she was gone. Or so the world believed. Jonathan Williams, her husband, sat in the front pew. His black suit looked sharp, too sharp, its creases too perfect, its fabric too expensive. His face was carefully arranged in sorrow, but behind his dark glasses, his eyes were restless, gleaming with something far removed from grief. His fingers tapped his knee, impatient, as if the entire ritual of mourning was nothing more than an inconvenient delay. Beside him, mourners whispered, cried, bowed their heads in prayer. But Jonathan's thoughts wandered elsewhere, toward the woman who wasn't sitting here, the woman who would be waiting when this was finally over. Clara, his mistress, his secret joy. Amanda's coffin rested only a few feet away, polished mahogany with golden handles. Yet Jonathan's mind was already across town, imagining Clara's arms, Clara's laughter, Clara's lips whispering promises of freedom, of a new life, of wealth now unshackled from Amanda's careful hands. Amanda had always been too wise, too strict with the company accounts, too loyal to her father's legacy. She had watched every penny, questioned every deal. Jonathan had felt caged, a man married to riches he could never fully taste. But now, finally, she was gone. The priest's voice rose, soft and solemn, echoing through the vaulted ceiling. Jonathan barely heard it. Instead, his gaze fell once more on the portrait of his wife, her eyes steady, almost knowing. Something in them unsettled him, like a secret hidden beneath the calm. He shifted in his seat, lowering his glasses further down his nose, as if to avoid her stare.
His phone vibrated silently in his pocket. He slipped it out with a hidden hand. A message glowed across the screen. After the service. Champagne is waiting. Finally, it's just us. Jonathan's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. He typed back quickly, soon. No one saw. Or at least, he thought no one saw. But from the far corner of the church, an old family friend, a lawyer Amanda had trusted for decades, watched Jonathan carefully. Watched the smirk. Watched the restless hands. And quietly, he folded his arms, as if holding on to a truth not yet spoken. The bells tolled. The service ended. People rose, voices hushed, feet shuffling against marble. Tears fell freely. Jonathan shook hands, murmured empty words of gratitude. His heart raced, not from sorrow, but from anticipation. As the coffin was carried down the aisle, the clouds above broke, and a single shaft of light spilled through the stained glass window. It painted Amanda's portrait in gold. For a moment, it seemed as though her eyes were following Jonathan, watching, waiting. And Jonathan, without even realizing, turned his gaze away. The funeral ended with the slow rumble of the hearse pulling away, its tires whispering over wet gravel. The guests dispersed in clusters, black umbrellas opening against a thin drizzle that had begun to fall again. The scent of rain mixed with perfume and damp coats. Jonathan didn't linger. He gave a few quick nods, accepted shallow condolences, and slid into the back of his waiting car. The driver closed the door gently, and the glass muted the sounds of grief outside. Inside, Jonathan exhaled, the mask of sorrow slipping off his face like a discarded veil. He loosened his tie, leaned back, and closed his eyes. For the first time in months, his shoulders felt light. "Home, sir?" the driver asked cautiously. Jonathan opened his eyes and glanced at his watch. A sly smile crept across his lips. "No, the penthouse." The driver didn't reply, but his grip on the wheel tightened. He had worked for the Williams family long enough to know the weight of silence, and long enough to keep his own. The city blurred past the rain-speckled windows, towering buildings of glass and steel, people huddled beneath awnings, vendors pulling carts across puddled streets. Jonathan barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, already painting the picture of Clara waiting with chilled champagne, her silk dress clinging to her like a secret. When he stepped into the penthouse, the air was warm, perfumed faintly with roses and vanilla. Soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers. And there she was, Clara, all curves and fire, standing by the window in a scarlet dress that caught the dim light and seemed to breathe with her body. "You're late," she teased, her voice low, playful. Jonathan let out a dry laugh, tossing his coat aside. "Funerals take time. Too many tears, too many speeches. But it's done. Finally done." Clara's smile widened. She poured 2 glasses of champagne, the bubbles rising like tiny sparks. Handing him one, she raised hers in a toast. To freedom. Their glasses clinked, crystals singing in the air. Jonathan swallowed deeply, letting the burn spread through his chest. Clara leaned close, her breath brushing his ear. "It's just us now. No one to stop us. No one to watch the accounts. No one to question." Jonathan's pulse quickened. Her words were everything he'd wanted to hear. "We'll take it all," he murmured, almost to himself. "The company, the houses, the cars. It's all mine now." Clara's eyes glimmered. "Ours," she corrected softly, but firmly. Jonathan smirked, pulling her close, his hand at the small of her back. Outside, the rain beat harder against the glass, thunder echoing faintly across the skyline. But beneath the music and the laughter, something else stirred in the air, an unease that Jonathan couldn't quite name. On the mahogany table in the corner, a small red light blinked silently. A camera, hidden, watching, recording. And in another part of the city, Amanda Williams, very much alive, sat in a quiet room, her eyes fixed on the monitor, watching her husband celebrate her death. Her lips curved, not with joy, but with a sorrowful strength. She whispered to herself, voice trembling yet resolute, "Let him show the world who he truly is." The storm outside grew heavier, as if the sky itself was waiting for what was to come. The storm pressed against the city that night, thunder rolling like distant drums. Jonathan and Clara stayed in the penthouse, their laughter echoing against marble and glass, sharp and hollow. He poured another drink, the amber liquid catching the flicker of lightning outside. "You should have seen them," Jonathan said, pacing across the living room. "All those faces, crying as if she was some saint. If only they knew." His chuckle was bitter, jagged. "Amanda's gone, and with her, the last obstacle." Clara, lounging on the velvet sofa, tilted her head. "And what about her father's legacy? The company, the board, they'll ask questions." Jonathan waved his hand dismissively, almost drunk on arrogance. "The board answers to me now. I've prepared everything. By the end of the month, the assets will shift." Amanda was too cautious, always hiding behind her ideals, her so-called integrity. "I'll show them what real power looks like." Clara smiled, but it was thin, fleeting. Something about his confidence unnerved her. She leaned back, tracing her fingers across the rim of her glass, hiding the unease flickering in her eyes. Outside, the storm deepened, and in another part of town Amanda sat silently, her face pale but steady. The dim light of the monitors painted shadows across her features. She wore no jewelry, no expensive clothes now, just a simple blouse and a scarf over her braided hair. The camera feeds showed everything: Jonathan's careless laughter, Clara's sly smirks, their toasts over her supposed death. Amanda's chest tightened, but she did not look away. Beside her, an older man cleared his throat. Mr. Adeyemi, her late father's loyal friend and longtime attorney, had been the one to suggest this plan: the staged funeral, the hidden cameras, the reveal at the right moment. "Do you see now?" he asked softly, leaning toward her. His voice carried both sorrow and vindication. "The man you trusted, celebrating before your body, is even cold." Amanda's eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. "I gave him everything," she whispered. "My love, my loyalty, my name. And this is what he does." She pressed her hand flat against the desk, steadying herself. "But I won't let him destroy what my father built. I won't let him take it all." Mr. Adeyemi nodded, his gaze stern. "The board will hear the truth. We have proof now: his intent to defraud, his betrayal, his greed. When the time comes, you'll walk back into that room alive. And Jonathan will have nothing left but his shame." Amanda inhaled deeply, closing her eyes. She could almost hear her father's voice again, the way he used to warn her. Wealth can build, Amanda, but it can also rot men from the inside. Watch who you trust. She had not listened then. But now, watching Jonathan's betrayal unfold on the screen, she understood every word. Back at the penthouse, Clara rose from the sofa and approached Jonathan. She wrapped her arms around him, her perfume thick in the air, her voice low. "We should celebrate more, privately." Jonathan grinned, pulling her closer, oblivious to the tiny blinking light watching them still. Amanda leaned back in her chair, her heartbeat steadying with a new kind of resolve. "Let him celebrate," she murmured. "Every smile, every kiss, every lie, it will all be his undoing." The rain lashed harder against the glass windows of the penthouse, as though nature itself bore witness to his betrayal. And in the silence of her hidden refuge, Amanda prepared for the storm she would bring. The morning broke with a deceptive calm, sunlight piercing through silver clouds, leaving the city washed and gleaming after the storm. Jonathan stood at the tall window of his penthouse, sipping coffee, surveying the horizon like a man who thought he owned it. Clara was still in bed, tangled in satin sheets, her breathing shallow and satisfied. On the dining table lay contracts and transfer documents, waiting for signatures. His pen rested nearby, a symbol of his triumph. Jonathan smirked, whispering to himself, "It's all mine now." But at the same time, across the city, Amanda walked slowly into the grand boardroom of her father's company. Every eye turned. Gasps spread like wildfire. Men and women who had buried her only days ago now rose to their feet, pale and wide-eyed. She wore black, not as a widow, not as a victim, but as a woman reborn, her presence commanding and calm. "Madam Amanda," one board member stammered, clutching the arm of his chair as if holding on to sanity itself. Amanda's gaze was steady, her voice low yet sharp enough to slice through disbelief. "I am alive. And before you ask, yes, everything you've heard is true. My husband celebrated my death. He conspired to strip this company of its legacy, my father's legacy." Mr. Adeyemi stepped forward, carrying files and video evidence. "We have everything, recordings, documents," his words. "This board deserves to see the truth." As screens lit up in the boardroom, Jonathan's image appeared, his laughter, his mockery, his embrace with Clara. Every word was played back, echoing across polished walls. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by gasps and muttered curses. Amanda's lips trembled, but she held her composure. "This is the man I trusted with my heart. This is the man who would have stolen everything my father built. But I will not let betrayal define me. I will not let greed bury the truth." News traveled faster than fire. By noon, Jonathan was dragged from his penthouse in handcuffs, his eyes wild with disbelief. Cameras flashed. Crowds jeered. Clara stood at the balcony, pale, mascara streaked down her cheeks, abandoned in the wreckage of her own schemes. Amanda did not go to see him. She didn't need to. His face as he was led away told her everything. Shock, rage, and a hollow echo where his pride used to be. Weeks later, Amanda stood in the gardens of her father's estate, the air thick with the scent of hibiscus and freshly turned soil. Children from the neighborhood ran along the path, laughing. She had opened the estate grounds to them, just as her father once did, letting joy replace shadows. Mr. Adeyemi joined her, his hands folded behind his back. "Justice has been served. The company is safe. But tell me, Amanda, are you?" Amanda turned her face toward the sunlight, her eyes soft. "I am healing, slowly, but I've learned that love is not measured in promises or wealth. It's measured in loyalty, in kindness, in truth." Jonathan lost everything because he never understood that. The wind stirred, carrying with it the sound of children's laughter. Amanda smiled faintly, placing a hand over her chest. The scars of betrayal would remain, but they no longer defined her. She had been buried in the eyes of the world, yet she had risen stronger, proof that even in the darkest betrayal, hope could still bloom. And in that quiet, sunlit garden, Amanda Williams began the next chapter of her life. Not as a victim, not as a billionaire's wife, but as a woman who reclaimed her name, her strength, and her father's legacy.